Hello, everyone. My name is Mauricio Cárdenas. Uh, I'm I'm the vice chair of the Marie Curie Alumni Association Italian chapter, and today we have our third video of our Voices of Interest series. So it is my honor to host this lovely project. So again, just a quick introduction for the video series. Our aim for this video series, we try to build a place to address an important aspect of our job as researchers, which is how we bring our research, how we get it, how we make it to go closer to the people that are outside of our research circle, so to the people that is not related to what we do. So this is what we try to do. And now, please allow me to give a small personal opinion, because I think that our job to do research is very important, but it is as important as any other job that is useful for our community and our society. So I am very pleased to introduce our third chapter of this video series. So please help me to welcome Alice. So I am very happy also to have you here with us, particularly because you will be the first person in this series interviews that works in social sciences, which is, I think, is very important to give also like plurality as the core of the Marie Curie project is. So welcome everyone to Voices of Interest. And as I said, I will try to give a wee introduction. Today we have Alice Gussoni, who is a MSc Postdoctoral Fellow at the Department of Historical and Geographical Sciences and Ancient World here at the University of Padua, but also an Honorary Research Fellow at the University of Oxford. Her research focuses mainly on mobility and migration studies, including both economic and intellectual migration. So welcome, Alice. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm honored to be part of this series, and I agree to what you said, that it's important for us to go outside academia and involve other people in what we actually do.
Yes. So, okay, then again, welcome. And so let's start. And I like to start every interview, every chat with the people talking a little bit about yourself. So could you please kind of give us some sort of your background or some story that you want to share?
Yeah, definitely. So my background is that of a person whose life has been characterized by mobility, actually. So that's probably the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I completed my bachelor and master degree in Verona. I'm from Brescia, northern Italy. And then I decided to not to pursue my academic interest, but to work actually in a completely different field and organize theater festivals. So I changed completely my career path. And then I realized that beyond this kind of interest that was in communication activities and so theater and music festivals and so on and so forth, there was an historical interest that was rooting inside. And so after 3 years of doing this job, I decided to pursue an academic career in history and to do my PhD. And I did my PhD in Oxford, so I moved. I moved to the UK, and I went to Oxford, which is a beautiful place to be, actually, to do research. And after the PhD, during the PhD, I was also teaching, and I was teaching Italian language. So Italian language in our Faculty of medieval and modern languages. And so I was also interested in a teaching career, so not only in academic research. And I tried to compensate these two ideas, these two interests. But what really interested me was the topic of mobility, in a sense that for my PhD I studied intellectual exile from fascist Italy. So my main topic was Gaetano Salvemini, who was a professor who had to leave Italy during fascism and relocated to the UK and then the US. And then I developed this kind of interest in understanding what moves people to move, actually, to not only political persecution in the case of the exiled person I was studying, but also economic interests. And so I decided that probably I had to complete my academic background by shifting the attention from the political exile that I was studying into the economic migration I was more involved in a way, because it's not like in the past, but economic migration is definitely something that is still present in Italy as well, and there are thousands of people that still leave Italy to pursue careers abroad, and that was actually my case. But I wanted to do it in a way of returning, in a way. So I tried to study economic migration from Italy by coming back to Italy, actually, and coming to Padua to do that. And so the Marie Curie was absolutely the best, the best kind of funding I could pursue for coming back actually to Italy after 9 years spent in Oxford, and having the resources for researching this kind of ambitious project on Sicilian migration. So that's more or less my background.
That's very nice. And just also to before starting or getting deep into your project or what is it that you do, just because I think it's important, as I mentioned in the previous video also, that people get to know a bit the fact that we are just normal persons, normal people, that we decided to do research. So it's our job. We like it. Probably not, but in theory we do. But it's also our job, and it's as important as any other job. So could you tell us something like your interest outside the academic world, also your job?
Yeah. My interest. The example I always make is that I like running. Doing research is more or less like running. When you begin, you feel like, oh my God, I cannot do any 1 more meters. I'm kind of dying. That's my limit. And doing research is exactly the same. At the beginning, you feel like you cannot reach the end of the path, but by training more, you realize that actually you are getting closer and closer and closer. Maybe not as much closer as you would like to, and not as fast as you would like to. But in the end, maybe you can find your own pace. And so running is my idea of being a normal person that is learning to do something. And I'm learning to run as much as I'm learning to do research. So that's my main example. And then other things I like to do in my spare time is reading, of course, because we always read during our job in social sciences is reading, actually. And sometimes you feel like, okay, I've been reading the whole day, and now are you still reading? So my friends ask me, but you never stop reading. Yes, because the thing that I like to read in my spare times are completely different from what I do during the day. So novels and anything else that sometimes is related to my job as well, or movies that talks about migrant crisis, so there's always the joke about me. So, but you never stop working, actually. But yes, I stopped working. The fact that I love my job and I love my research topic, and so that's the point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it makes sense, no? At the end, it's something we like, so makes sense that you keep, I don't know, track on that, even if in different ways, like more recreative ones. But yeah, it's very nice. So now, also, I find it very interesting, for instance, me, myself, being someone that have lived abroad for quite a while. So I moved to do my PhD as well in the UK, and then I moved to Italy. So, like, migration is something that kind of touches me. I have been lucky in the way I migrate. So it's not that I'm comparing myself to others, but still, no, it's also it have made me think more about it, about the fact that it exists once you live it, than before when I was just up to my master's that I lived all my life in Mexico. No, so I think it's a very interesting topic, and so could you now talk a bit of what your actual project is? What do you work on?
Yeah, so my project is about Sicilian migration and specifically to Louisiana, so to the United States, but precisely to Louisiana at the end of the 19th century. So the idea is to research this specific migration flow by focusing on the role of immigration agents and labor recruiters, so the people who facilitated the migration flow, so those that acted as intermediaries in this migration flow. So basically, I'm trying to reconstruct the network of the immigration agents in Sicily and of the labor recruiters in Louisiana. The labor recruiters often were former migrants, Italian-American Italian-Americans that turned themselves into labor recruiters. And so I'm trying to reconstruct this link, the link between these two poles. So what happened in Sicily, so how people decided to leave and why they decided to leave specifically for Louisiana. So were there any specific factor, and how actually these people were connected to the people in Louisiana. So how the communication system worked. So I'm trying to map this system and to give a sense of a migration flow that is understudied, but also is connotated by a lot of stereotypical views and a lot of simplification, both in the Sicilian milieu, so looking at Sicilian migration agents as people smugglers, if we want to turn to the contemporary themes, and recruiters in Louisiana as those were linked to criminal activities and so on and so forth. So my idea is to try to dismantle stereotypical views on this specific migration flow, to map the presence of agents and recruiters, and possibly to apply this system, this mapping to other regional cases.
Nice, thank you very much. Now, also, this is already, so for me, also when I explain my research, it depends also on who I am talking to. I'm more used to talk to people related to the same field. So I'm also sometimes lost in technicalities, etc. So just in order to kind of try to address that, especially because now, particularly with what you do, I'm also part of the people that are far from that the area. Could you now try to explain what you do just for someone like me that is completely out of it? Like, for instance, I don't know why probably Louisiana, okay, it doesn't mean much to me, it's a place, but or also what is it important, for your project, the importance of your project, and just like in non-technical words, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. So if I had to summarize my research question is, so why Sicilian peasants at some point at the end of the 19th century decided to leave their land for a place that they never heard about before. So basically the question is how these people who were often illiterate, couldn't read and write, decided to change their life and to move to Louisiana, which was a place absolutely unknown if we think of a small Sicilian village in the middle of the countryside. So that's the main question, why? And the answer is never simple to a question that begins with why. It's always complex. So what I'm trying to do is to put together all the factors, so economic factors, social factors, so what kind of society they were living in Sicily, and what kind of society they were going to find actually in Louisiana. So what kind of link existed between Sicily and Louisiana, and if there is a migration chain, so when you migrate, usually you always go to a place, not always, you tend to go to a place where other people have been. So in this case, Sicilian peasants began to go to Louisiana because other people went to Louisiana before them. But who were these people? So who were the people who started the chain? And so what I'm trying to understand is who were those people that left first, and why they left, and why they created a chain and other people followed them. So more or less that's the point.
And so also just so to clarify, probably for myself, then how can that relate to like every like modern problem? Because it's still if not a problem, let's say, at least a situation that keeps happening, and it's happening right now. So to different places, probably, now Italy, instead of being a country where the people goes abroad, it still happens, but like it's also like a people that receives people, So how can your project relate or have an impact into like our modern day, let's say?
Exactly, and Italy, and particularly Sicily, because if we think Sicily as the place where thousands, millions of people left at the end of the 19th century, and now it's the main hub to entering into the European Union. And so the link with the present is in the kind of narrative that we observe. So at the end of the 19th century, the narrative was that of limiting the rights to move in a way by preserving Italy from losing to a labor force in a way. And at the same time, in the US, there were restrictions to enter to limit the fact that the Europeans, and not only Italians, were going to steal, in a way, the jobs to the American people and corrupt the American identity, in a way, if we can talk about an American identity, which is a paradox, if you want. So nowadays, we see the same mechanism in reverse. So Italy is Europe, let's say, is trying to prevent people to reaching Europe in an irregular way. And today's debates of these very days is on how to limit irregular migration. And the narrative that we hear is usually that we have to target the people that capitalize on these migration flows. So nowadays is the people smugglers. In the past, it was immigration agents. So Italy was targeting the laws that Italy passed in 1888 and 1901 were exactly targeting the role of immigration agents. So immigration agents had to have a license and to exercise their role. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to work because they were accused of fueling the immigration flow and to push actually people to migrate. And this kind of narrative doesn't consider completely the decision-making progress of the migrants. So the migrant doesn't decide to leave only because someone tells him or her them to leave. The decision is always complex. And if we consider that nowadays we just think that there are people smugglers and there are, for example, NGOs in the Mediterranean Sea that are a pull factor because people risk their lives only because they know that there is an NGO saving their lives in the sea. Well, we are underestimating the fact that it's not so simple. There is a decision-making process. And what I'm trying to do is exactly that, to show that it's not only a matter of someone who tells you there's a labor opportunity, a job opportunity abroad, leave everything and go. It's much more complex than that.
Okay, yes, thank you. Because I normally also struggle to understand also things that are outside my area, like why is that important? But even of my own, no? Sometimes it's like that basic that is like, how can you explain people? It does have an impact, no? And it's true because yes, it's like for what I'm getting is it happened already, no? And we can also see that in the past it was already not that simple. So it's not that it's repeating itself. It's always been like that, but also it's always been the same situation that probably policymakers they treat it as there is this reason and there is this consequence, whereas it's like a very whole process. It has always been an understanding how it has always been a complex process might also help the present situation, no? So thank you for that. And still on the same path, so to try to kind of probably it's not also as simple, but to narrow it down, could you list some impactful things that have come or that you expect to come from your project, from your research?
Yes, the first thing is a methodology that I'm trying to develop. So what I'm basically working on archival papers. Of course, I'm an historian, so that's my lab. The archive is my lab. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to focus on archival papers in Palermo and in Naples that are related to the Prefettura and Questura, so the local offices of the Minister of the Interior and the public security papers. So I'm trying to work on those papers which show us cases of frauds against migrants. So my view on immigration agents is not neutral, actually, is based on papers which describe them as people that were enacted frauds against migrants. So a very negative view. And that's a difficult thing to do because I'm trying to be neutral on papers that are not. Mm-hmm. So that's the main point. And the idea is to, through these sources, create a map of that gives us the idea of the presence of agents in southern Italy, not only in Sicily. And the main thing is that these kind of papers have not been studied at all so far. So if I manage to map the presence of agents in Sicily through this kind of questura and prefettura papers, these methods can be then applied to other geographical regions in Italy. So the first thing is this kind of methodology, and the methodology I'm also adopting is interdisciplinary. So also I'm using literary studies, and so narratives, newspapers, novels that talks about immigration agents. And so what's the description that we have of immigration agents in public security papers, in literature, in newspapers? So what's the public opinion on these people? What we can gather from these kind of different sources. And another thing that is emerging is a new idea both on Sicily, of course, because basically everything I am finding in archives is more or less new, because these papers are completely untapped. And so every detail I can find is new, but also in the study of the Sicilian community in Louisiana. The Sicilian community in Louisiana has been described by scholarship, but sometimes, let's say often with stereotypical tones, with the idea of the Italians being criminals, of course, mafiosi, but also victims of discrimination. That is true, because Italians in Louisiana, for example, and Sicilian in particular, were not considered as fully white. They were in the middle between being white and black, also because they worked in sugar plantations. And so they were exactly like the formerly, so the emancipated enslaved people. And so their identity was in between, was not completely white. But this analysis is based, again, on studies that looked at the ethnic perception of Italians, which are essential, but overlooked other factors. For example, that the Italian community was actually thriving in some sectors, such as the fruit business, the oysters business, and they were at the center of a kind of a monopoly of these industries. And so the violence that happened against Sicilians in New Orleans were victims of a famous, infamous episode of lynching. But the lynching was not only based on ethnic reasons, but also was a mean to curtail their prominence in some businesses. So the new ideas are coming out from this project on the view of the Sicilian community in general. And I'm also discovering other episodes of violence against Sicilians that were based not only on ethnical discrimination, but mainly on political and economic factors that saw them as emerging and creating some disturbances, let's say that, to the state of things in Louisiana. So these are the two main points, I would like to make.
Yes, and I think also now listening to you, I believe also, for instance, what we were just talking before about the fact that it's a complex situation. It's also like in the sense of like migration is a complex situation, but the migrant and the view on the migrant is also a complex situation, no? Because what you just said about like these were a different type of migration than the one they got when they had slaves and then it was abolished. But then they only have a view of this is the migrant, no? The former slaves. But now someone else arrives that doesn't fit that profile, but neither the profile or the people that were already like the locals, no? So it's also, I guess, yeah, that's a very interesting point, like that probably adds to this complexity. So there is not only a migrant, but a complexity with different also the background, that it's not that a background is a bad background, it's just different. So it should also be considered on what happened, no? Because what you say at the end, also it happened, so violence against those migrants, even if it was not because they didn't really like them or they despised them. It was because they were thriving. So it was like, oh, still violence for a different reason, but still, no, at the end, the consequence was similar to like a very negative one. So I find that very, very interesting, very important also, again, to kind of parallel to what has continuously happened with migration and still nowadays. So thank you for that. And so in your, from this, uh, from this explanation that you already told us about your project and the methodologies that you are aiming to build, and the new studies by looking at the different archives and trying also to get this extract a neutral idea from that already biased idea. What do you think is the, or will be the most innovative? Like if you have to pick only one thing that you will leave to the people, let's say, in a way, or your project will leave to the people, what would you say that might be?
Yeah, the most innovative thing probably is the fact that I'm trying for the first time to give a comprehensive overview of the Sicilian, of this specific Sicilian migration flow by looking at the point of departure and the point of arrival. So trying to connect these two poles. So not only looking at what happened, because migration and mobility is always a matter of leaving a place and reaching another one. And if we look only to one side, we will never have a complex view. So the achievement I would like to get from this project is connecting the two places and to see what happened. And specifically, I would also like to see what happened not only when Sicilians left to Louisiana, but also when Sicilians from Louisiana then went back to Sicily. So also working on the idea of return migration. So how these migrants left, settled, then came back and possibly helped or inspired other people to move in a way. So this idea of a circular migration, so the idea that between Palermo and New Orleans, there is a link that hasn't been explored so far. So probably, yeah, that's my main aim.
Okay, thank you very much. And just now to kind of start wrapping things up, could you now, like we talk about also the importance of your own research for the society in general, but could you then please share a wee thought on the importance of research in general, of what we all do, because even if it's far or it could be seen far, at the end is like if we ground it as research, how does it, or what's your thought on how research has an impact in everyday life?
Yeah, definitely. And especially by being an historian, a question that people ask me very often is, what's the purpose of learning about the Sicilian people going to Louisiana at the end of the 19th century? Well, the purpose is the same of every historical research. So historical research is particularly relevant in our current days because it gives us tools to understand the reality, because the fact is that we have a tendency to, there is a tendency to think of history as something distant, something related to the past. But history is always related to the present, because we always research events happened in the past with the lens of today and with the category that we apply today. So, for example, if we think of what happens nowadays with AI or fake news, manipulation of reality. So what's the point of studying history? The point of studying history, of researching, is having the tools to understand that everything that we see, read, listen to has to be rooted into a source. And we need to be able to understand what the source of what we are reading is. And the historical methods is relevant, and doing research is relevant because the research gives us the tools to understand the reality we live in. For example, the problem nowadays is, for example, when we watch a video, sometimes if it's something very easy, we tend to believe it. If it's something disturbing, maybe we start thinking, well, is it real or is it AI? And this is challenging because sometimes we don't have the tools to understand whether something is real or something is manipulated. But the problem is that if we are able to go back to the source to understand whether our source is reliable or not, then we can understand what's going on. So research, in my case, is the key. Historical research is the key to understand the world we are living in, and we cannot underestimate this. So my answer to the question, what's the purpose of your research, is always, well, if you don't understand what was happening 20, 50, 100 of years ago, you cannot understand what is going on now. Not because it's the same, not because history repeats itself, but because you learn a method and you learn to develop your tools to navigate the complex reality we are living in.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very even inspiring also for myself, as I told you before, being outside from that field, but also identifying myself, I think, in a way like yes, how people probably think, oh, well, why is this important? No, like in a despicable way. But I think you just clarify that very much as well for myself as well, because as I said, I'm kind of naive in this and I'm not that related. So thank you very much. I think also it has been very, very interesting. Also a great way to kick off, as I mentioned, the first video from social sciences. So also to show how important it is the Marie Curie program that is a plural program, no? So that everyone in every field can apply, can get it, and can develop the research, because there is not only one research that is important, but all the fields, no? So I think also this is a great and beautiful example because of your project, because of how you have explained to us with the passion. And so I just want to say thank you very much again. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so thank you everyone as well. So stay tuned for our next video, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.